Okay. So I am Sofia Streja now, aka Miss Debra, aka Debra Inksmith. I go back to 1981. My first tattoo was in Eric Inksmith's studio in Brunswick, Georgia, because there wasn't any other place to get one in Florida at the time. So the closest place we could find a tattoo, I went with a boyfriend. Had no interest in tattoos at all until was dating a guy with a tattoo, and he was like, "One day, let's just go get a tattoo." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So the Eric King Smith fell in love with me because I was a pretty hot little chick back then. And thanks, babe. I didn't pay her to say that either. So, so one thing led to another. We started dating, and I was a bookkeeper, so I started doing his books. And I figured I was struggling raising a child by myself, drive an hour one way to work back and forth. Saw it as an opportunity. I started doing his books and saw the money he was bringing, and I'm like, well, if he had a woman in there helping him, he could double his money, and he and both between the two of us, we could do really good. So I was dating him, so I needed to marry him because they wanted to send me to Texas to be a sales secretary. So that did not appeal to me at all. I was pretty much an artist my whole life, but never recognized. They didn't do that back then. The last thing they wanted you to do is be an artist or a musician or anything back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s because,
They
you
said you
know,
couldn't make a living being an
no, they
artist.
wanted you to be a glorified waitress in the sky or a secretary or something that had to do with like working in the women like concept world. So anyway, I'd never fit in a square peg in the round hole thing anyhow. So I looked at this guy. I was at his house and it was the smell of green soap, man, hit me like took me by the nostrils and drug me in that tattoo shop. The images busted and everywhere, color and drawings and the sound of that machine and the people coming in, and I was like, where am I right now? And I'm like in this dark and he's smoking cigarettes and this dark magic place, and I'm like, I am in a magical world. I got to know more about this. And that was my first experience getting a tattoo. I fell in love with the smell and the whole thing, the sound. So anyhow, we started dating. I got into it, and the first tattoo I did, unfortunately, was on a 15-year-old girl, and he was just like, she walks in with her mom. He's like, "Okay, well, you're gonna do this tattoo," and I was like, "What?" So I used to take little designs home for when we were dating, and I was a runner, so I'd run. I was caring for my son by myself, running like at midnight. I'd go run for a mile at night. Every single night I would run for a mile before I'd go to bed. My son was asleep, had a sitter. I'd come home, take a shower, start drawing. I had these little drawings. I had a little table, a little light, and I'd sit there and trace stuff. I was trying to get good with my hand. Poor thing. I did this tattoo on this little girl and it was just horrible. I could not hit the line. I could not, I was shaking like a leaf. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't keep the skin tight. Didn't remember anything. I freaked out. So anyway, I told him, I said, if I ever do that again, I will never pick up a tattoo machine as long as I live. And I will never do this again because I was sick to my stomach. I went to bed. The next tattoo I did, he said, you're going to do on me. So I did it on him. And he walked me through the whole thing and it was flawless. And he said, well, that's it. You can do this. So the next few tattoos, I did one or two tattoos at home. And then we went to New Orleans. And I walked in Jackie's shop in New Orleans. And I think I did my third through 10th or something I wrote them all down. I carried it in my wallet forever. Actually, those little 10 tattoos I did. Learned a lot, saw some more images that she had on her walls, saw how a tattoo shop was run in another town. It was my first experience in another tattoo shop. I was blown away. Loved it, was hooked. And then I ended up going to, I don't know if Louis was before or after Fayetteville, after the convention in 1982. My first convention was on the Queen Mary. When that happened, that was the convention. I think it was after when I went with Louis. It blew my mind. Blew my mind. I had already met Paul Rogers. I was taken to Paul Rogers' house. I forgot to tell you on my first date with Eric Inksmith. If Paul did not approve of me, I probably wouldn't have been his girlfriend. But Paul loved me. We fell in love immediately. Helen was still alive. It was on Shetter Avenue, and he took me in the workshop. He took me in the iron factory back then, and that was in '81. And I got to see the iron factory and all these people's machines. I walked in to the iron factory, and you had these little milk containers hanging around, and I saw Ed Hardy, and I saw like Horioshi, and I saw Mike Malone and all these people's names, and I was like, because I knew a little bit because I had been reading what little bit I could get my hands on in Eric Shaw. And it was amazing. I knew I was standing in the presence of a demigod, and I knew I was hooked. So we went to the tattoo convention. There, I was escorted by Paul Rogers. So that's really how the doors opened for me then. And that opened a whole world for me. I met Horioshi, I met Ed Hardy, I met Greg Irons, I met Suzanne Fowler, I met all the women, all the men. Anybody that was anybody was at that show. At that show, it's the creme de la creme of tattoo conventions, I think. What do you think? Oh, definitely. There hasn't ever been anything like it, I think, in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And I was hooked. And I went back home, and my world expanded and opened. My artistic abilities changed, my lines changed, my coloring changed, my concepts changed, my design changed, everything changed. And then Philadelphia Eddie came to visit me one day, and he saw my cats. I was doing cat tattoos, portraits of cats. And I had that one cat book. We all ended up with the big cat book, right? Traced the cats right out. They were talking really about how we got our design sizes and stuff. We couldn't really change sizes of anything back then. If it was in a book and you traced it, that was pretty much what you got. We didn't have copy machines. We didn't have anything to make things bigger or smaller. If you didn't know how to already draw it yourself,
I did the square thing.
you could
Fold
do
it in
that.
a square,
You could
fold it
do
in
the
a
grid.
square, and do the square, those
We
lines,
could do
those
the
lines,
grid.
make it a little bit bigger.
We could do the grid system. I went to college and studied that, but much later. But anyhow, that was really the only thing we could do. So with that, anything, and also way something faced. We didn't have really tracing paper, so the way something faced was also the way you got it. We came from the acetate stencil days, where we had to cut our own stencils with an inscriber and plastic acetate, and then dump the stencil powder in it. So whatever way the stencil was already was the way the design was, unless you retrace it again on the other side, and then you'd have a double image, reverse image. But whatever size it was whatever size it was. There was no change in that. So that's why you saw a lot of tattoos in the beginning that were kind of jacked up and too small. And probably that was Ed's thing, back then. It's just too small. We didn't know about too small. We didn't know about too big.
Be careful not to wipe it off, because
and don't wipe anything, because a whole stencil would come off. So then you had to learn how to freehand. That was when I first learned how to freehand. Was wiping those damn things off by accident,
and
right?
fill in the line and try to make
cow.
it look good. Oh, it's perfect.
But then that's also how a lot of them got wonky, because a lot of these people were not artists. They were stencil jockeys. Remember that? We called them stencil jockeys. All they could do was trace. All they could do was follow a line. They couldn't draw anything on their own. And we were taught, most of us were taught by stencil jockeys. So when the women started coming in and the East Coast style started mixing in with the Japanese influence, I think with the old school style started changing and the women started stepping in now, I started seeing a whole different influx of design quality, finer lines, more colorful, prettier images on the women, the way they flowed, the way we carried ourselves. And when they talked about dressing up at these shows, let me tell you something, we were dressed to the nines. And the way, when I met Peggy first, I told her today, the way I remember her from those days, the way she walked into a show, the way we all walked in was elegant. We did not carry ourselves like biker chicks or, thug life. We didn't,
it was
carried
an excuse
ourselves
to dress up.
Right. We loved it. It was an excuse to dress and be the most best of ourselves we could be and show the world that this was not, we're trying to pull that old stigma away from it. Because our men we were talking about didn't even want us to be tattooed. Our men didn't want, Eric never wanted me to get a tattoo. I'm like, then why did you get me into this industry? If you don't want me to be tattooed, I loved it, you know? Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of fight for that right basically to get tattooed myself as a tattoo artist, which was crazy. I remember when Jackie walked in for the first time, I was like, holy cow. Not only was she black, she was tall, and I told her with legs up to here, came in with the fanciest hats and the most elegant gowns. I was blown away. I was blown away. And then the tattoos were bigger than I had ever seen and beautifuler I had ever seen. And I was just like, that was a whole nother thing that just changed my life, changing my whole way of looking at stuff. So we were all an influence in each other's lives, because if we had had to leave it up to the men, we'd still be like Flintstone tattooing, man, because I think solely, I think that women changed, made it necessary for the industry to change, because we couldn't buy those old concepts anymore. You know, those things weren't working for us anymore. And the way the heaviness of the machines, and the way that they did things, and the uncleanliness of the shops that we had to work in. They put us to work cleaning all of a sudden. You know, they weren't clean before we got there, but they were sure clean after. Yeah, well, right after we left, they were damn sure clean. So guys start thinking, wow, now this is pretty good. You know, it smelled like candles, and we would burn incense and put flowers in there and move furniture around, and they'd be like, whoa, that's kind of nice. So they got used to it. But so slowly we had to migrate into the seriousness of actual tattooing. But we started off as cleaners and fetchers and pats on the head and strokes, and you know,
You
but we
sexualize and objectified a lot
oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, we all face the same. I don't know about you. We all face the same sexual sort of like misconceptions. Like if you were in this industry, you're obviously a loose woman. You had seen it all, you know. And a lot of us had not seen it all. We didn't want to see it all, you know. But we were forced to see it all because, you know, of the industry we were in. You're shut up in a room sometimes with a guy. There's nobody around, you know, what do? You know, and it's just like a lot of us had to fend for ourselves, deal with ourselves. Even our employers, you know, were abused and pushed to the limit sometimes by even our employers, and we had to fight our way out and in of situations. And it was rough. It was rough. And so when we get together as women now, which I think is wonderful, because men don't bond like this at conventions. They don't have a men's thing where we sit around and talk about history. They'd rather not know, you know. But I feel it's so important because we're not only able to tie ourselves together with the history, but we can bring in the men that helped us along, that we hold in high regard. Even the losers, even the ones that abused us, did teach us some lessons, very serious, vital lessons on how to be strong women and wear tough skins in this industry, because we sure needed it, right? Basically, we did. Yeah. So I started in 1981, 1982. I started tattooing a little bit different. So I've been in the industry. I moved from Brunswick, Georgia to Jacksonville, Florida, and sat on the board of helping the guild, the Florida Tattoo Guild, opening and helped opening. And she knows some of the first rules and regulations for state of Florida to tattoo legally, because it was illegal when we came here. And she can fill in some of the blanks with that too. And that's how kind of when we met through who again?
Lou.
Through Lou. Tattoo Lou. Had one from Fayetteville, but he had one of the first shops in Florida too. He got ballsy enough and went down to and opened shops and was a part of that whole thing. That's kind of what brought us there, right? Kind of what brought me there was Lou. We found out that you could do that, and we were in Brunswick, and I wanted to come back. Jacksonville, Florida is my hometown, so I wanted to go there. So by circumstance, we got in, but it was a rough ride getting in. So we helped change the legislation and everything, basically. And that's where she came in at the same time, met me. And what? How'd you meet me? And then what?
In Fayetteville.
What's your name first?
My name's Deanna Lippens, and I had opened Dina Skin Art Studio in Orlando. And then I moved it out to Christmas, and I tattooed for 40 years. Opened my shop in 1984. But I met Philadelphia Eddie in Jacksonville, North Carolina, when I was up there with my ex-husband. Eddie had opened up a tattoo shop that was connected to a bar where I worked, and I used to hustle Marines in there for him to tattoo. And Luz Cabarrus had come and started working for him there. And Michelle was probably 7 years old. And I worked with his wife at the time, Nancy. And that's how I got to be friends with Lou. Lou kind of looked out for me and he would protect me. But I didn't consider tattooing because Eddie had already told me that women couldn't tattoo and they weren't allowed in the tattoo shop. So I didn't go in the tattoo shop. I'd hustle these guys and bring them in and chew them in. And eventually, after a while, I started going in with them and standing in and watching them tattoo. And, Louis was cool with it. And when Eddie come in, he would get mad because I was in the tattoo shop. So when he was tattooing, I'd sneak up behind him and start watching him, and I'd watch him. And as I was watching him, I'd get closer and closer, and then he'd notice me and he'd say, "Get out from behind me! What are you doing in here?" And start yelling at me. So I'd go back to work because I'd have my breaks. I'd go there, and then Louis opened up the shop in Jazzland, and I'd moved from the Bowery over to Jazzland. I was working there, and he was my friend. He would drive me home sometimes, and I still wasn't tattooing. I knew I couldn't tattoo because it wasn't allowed. So eventually we came back home because my father and my parents had retired in Orlando, and we came back to Orlando, and I met a guy, Doc Anderson, that had come over from Hawaii, and his dad was a sign painter and he was an artist and he did tattoos. And so he approached me to trade me room and board for a year to teach me how to tattoo. And he said, if I teach you how to tattoo, don't do what I do. Do what I tell you to do. Because he was like a crazy tattoo guy. So he'd be tattooing somebody and they'd say, "Oh, I want something really big." And I was thinking about a back piece. And so he'd put a dot here and a dot here and a dot here. He'd say, "Well, about that big?" And they'd say, "Yeah." And he'd start going, "Wow," drawing stuff on them, you know? And I seen him tattoo it one time. And he says, "I don't know, I just running good enough." Went, on his tongue. It was like, "Don't ever do that," he said to me.
Oh my god.
And he was tattooing a guy one time, and he did something that was getting too high. He said, "I can't do this anymore. Finish it. Collect
Oh my
$300 for me." So he left, and I finished the tattoo. He collected the money, and he didn't come back. And somebody came, and I thought, "Well, I'm going to do this tattoo." And we didn't change the needles or nothing. Everything was just stuck in this little thing with the holes with the liquid underneath it. So somebody wanted a tattoo. So I said, "I think I can do this." And I pulled out this one machine, and I didn't realize it was a single needle line. And I tried to make a line, and the needle was moving. And every time I tried to hit the line, it would make another line. And I was like really messing up this tattoo. And I'm starting to sweat. Like, this guy is over there so proud his wife's getting this tattoo. And I'm going, "Oh my God, oh my God, I can't hit that line. The needle's moving. Why is the needle moving?" And Doc came back, and I said, "Oh, Doc, look." And he went, "Oh yeah, let me take over." So he took over and fixed the tattoo and covered all the mistakes I made and made a really nice tattoo. And I said, "What's wrong with that?" He said, "Well, I hang it out longer because that's a single needle, and you're supposed to just work off the tip of it. You're not supposed to like use the whole thing and grind it in. So that was a lesson I learned. But we used to do like biker runs and stuff like that. And he left, and I decided I wanted to continue tattooing, and I was using his equipment. So I talked to my dad, and he bought me a Spalding and Rogers starter kit. So I got the great big old big tall Spalding and Rogers power supply, and I got clip cord, and I got the foot switch, and I bought a couple of tattoo machines, and I bought some pigments, but I didn't realize that you had to mix the pigments. So they were powder. So then I started researching how you mix the powder or whatever. So I tried alcohol, and it seemed to work. But then I talked to Eddie, and Eddie said, "No, the secret is vodka."
So good.
Vodka. I said, "Vodka?" He said, "That's the best alcohol for mixing pigments." And I said, "Well, that makes sense. You can drink it. Should be able to put it in your body, and a couple other things, your vitamin E, your propylene glycol, and
Yeah.
a couple other things you put in there to make it creamy so it doesn't separate.
Mhm.
So I started making all my pigments. I never tattooed with pigments that I didn't make myself, unless it was somebody that had, like Mario Bart sent me a whole big box of his pigments. Try these and tell me what you think. You know, well, I like this color, but I don't like this color, or you know. And Dave Long gave me some pigments to try, and I I opened my shop in '84 because I wanted to be legal. So I researched it and found out you have to have a doctor. And Lou is my friend, so I called Lou, and he was on the board trying to create a board for inspecting tattoo shops and licensing them and stuff. So I went up there, and they had a multimedia class, and they had a course that you had to take to teach you how to tattoo, and you had to have a, what's that shot they give you,
Oh,
the 4-prong one,
yeah, tuberculosis.
tetanus, TB,
Tuberculosis.
something like that.
Tuberculosis.
You had to make sure and go back and check it. It didn't make no sores there.
Tuberculosis.
And if it did, you couldn't tattoo. You know, so I didn't have nothing. And so I took my certificate back to Florida. So I got the certificate in this test grade I got in the 90s, and the certificate that passed. So I took it down, and I had all my equipment in the trunk of my car and went to the doctor. And I said, come on out here and I'll show you what I got to do. And I said, this is what you do. These are machines, and this is how you do that. And these are the tubes. Put the needles in here, and this is the pigment, and this is what I'm going to do. And I learned sterility, and I took my bloodborne pathogen and that course, and I took a multimedia course. So I got my card from the Red Cross. So if they pass out, they can't sue me if I wake them up and try to help them, which I thought that would work.
Yeah. No.
And so I went down and I found a place to rent, and I got my dad co-signed for a loan for $2,000, and I went down and I paid the rent, and I got the license. The license was $35, and the doctor said he didn't want any money because he liked me and he thought I had a right to do tattoos if I wanted to, and so he signed for me. So he signed for me the whole time I was tattooing until we changed the law.
So I wanted to say something quick about pigments because you had asked them earlier about the pigments. So I know a girl who is researching pigments recently, and where they were trying to figure out, like, a lot of, there's so many companies now, you just do not
The
know.
predispersed,
Yeah,
predispersed
So
and
back in the old
homogenized
days,
plastic based stuff, and
well,
some stuff's really bad to put in the skin.
back in the old days, we used all across the board. I learned from her, a pigment is a pigment is a pigment across the board, right? And they were starting to come back to us and try to ask us old timers. Now she was trying to get back to me and find out what were we using, because apparently what we were using back in the day is the safest crap out there.
You could eat the pigment at
You
that.
could eat. I mean, and now they're having so many problems with it.
The propylene glycol they use in dogs.
Yeah, so they're like,
people's
so
hair.
what did you use? And I'm like, well, we use this and that. And it's like, I'm run old school. I'm like, should I tell them? Should I tell them my secrets? I'm like, I don't know you. Who are you? I gotta.
Well, they don't mix it anymore, so it's not. It doesn't matter. They buy the stuff.
Well, they were trying to do that because in some places they're starting to put, like,
they have to
different
have
colors.
What's in it? Like they have to have it on the bottle.
They're taking it off the market because they're finding out about, they're putting people in there that really don't know a lot about pigments. They're doing this research and they're pulling colors off the shelf. So regulation is something that we still fear that they could pull at any minute our stuff from us. So it's
that's
something
why
APT
to be started.
Well, it's still something, I know all about it, but she's on the APT, but we should all still be concerned about this. And it's something that, I don't want to put paranoia into people, but I think it recently happened over in England where they banned green and blue.
Yes, so, because what's in it? Just like the dyes. It's the dyes that they're putting in food that they're banning. Some of those they might put into pigments, so it's not good.
That's why instead of researching it and getting back to the basics, they're just illegalizing it across the board because it's easier that way. Nobody gives a shit about doing research about it, except for my girlfriend who was worked with some Mac scientists that were trying to figure out what the chemical components were that were causing the problems. There's too many. So she says, but the ones they were testing,
like
from back in the day, from back in, back in the day, were the most purest pigments that they were finding that weren't causing any problems.
So we might have to go back to basics.
Exactly.
They probably should.
Exactly.
I've got cases of pigment still. I bought enough to last me a lifetime.
A lot of us,
Collectible.
oh, they are, and a lot of us did that for a reason. It was like having seed banks for pigments for back in the day, because we projected this.
That
The
they
ones
were
that
gonna
were
start
intelligent
trouble.
projected this kind of situation back a long time ago. So I know for a fact I know people that have pigments stored away in dark places that are the same pigments we've used, and all it takes is 3 or 4 ingredients, and bam, you got the best pigments that you can make, you know. So we all know how to do it. All of us old school girls, we know how to make this stuff. We know how to make needles. We know how to build a machine. We know how to make stencils, but everything from scratch, because we had to do that before we could even be taught to tattoo. You know, nowadays everything's all put together
I
for
learned
you, and
how to
these kids
do
don't know what's
needles
in
with a
what,
spool of
and we don't
and
know
a
what's in
flat
what.
razor.
So I try to buy and research and do a little bit more about pigment companies and what I'm trying to put into people these days. So that's just one thing I had to say about that.
Yeah, I got enough pigments
So
that I
Dina,
can give them
before
to
I
you.
ask you about your convention, I had a small question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
You're Latina,
Mm-hmm.
right?
What?
You're Latina, Spanish.
Poco poco.
Were you? How did your family feel about you becoming a tattoo artist, especially in the '80s?
Well, I was always a black sheep anyway, so I never did do anything to their like and know how. So I was not even caring about my grandfather. They would look at my photo albums upside down and stuff. Oh, that's so nice. And I'd be like, you have it upside down. Oh, you know, they thought it was all right. I mean, they couldn't believe that I was making that much money, I guess, doing what I was doing. They were all struggling and thinking I needed to be a secretary, and I didn't have a college education until I started tattooing. And then I went to college and studied fine art because I wanted to better myself as an artist. I didn't just want to be, and I wanted a backup for tattooing. I was going to be an art teacher as a backup. I always had plan B, plan C. That's what I'm trying to tell the young generation now. As an elder, what I can pass on is they need a plan B and a plan C. Don't think that your job is secure. Okay?
My
I'm
job
just
was
saying,
secure because I made it myself, and it was my business, and I worked alone.
no, I understand that part of it, but I'm saying the industry in general is changing so much that I don't know where it's going. Like Jackie said, we've seen so much changes in just the short years that we've been doing this. I think about it in another few years, it is a multi-million-dollar industry now.
More actually this year. They're considered billions.
Billions. So they're not ever going to
And there's a lot of
yank it.
industries that are coming in and making money off of the tattoo industry.
Well, that's
I'm
what's
doing the
going
stuff that
on.
we used to do for ourselves
Well, the mom and pop shops,
to make it easy thing.
the mom and pop shops that we were raised in are a dying art. They're bringing in people that don't even own shops, opening these huge metropolises and filling them up with people, and you know, everybody's got their headphones on, and it's just so impersonal is how yeah, robotic and personal. And Jackie was talking about that machine thing. I saw that too, and they've actually stepped it up a notch. And now there are people out there wanting tattoos by a robot. Is that the way of the future? I don't think so. I think it's a gimmick. I think it'll pass it going, you know, just because, oh, look, I got a tattoo from a robot. It'd be like, look, I got a tattoo from a monkey, or look, I got a tattoo from an elephant, you know, but it's a unique thing. You know what I'm saying? But nobody wants to get tattoos from elephants the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's just the way I feel about that.
So, Shanghai Kate, a long time ago, I interviewed her, and she said yes. She said she's actually on my women's edition on the cover. So she had told me that as a woman, it was very difficult to have children and still be a tattoo artist, and those that did have children had difficulty just being able to be all heads, you know, tattoo artist.
I raised my son, and when I was separated from my husband, I divorced him. Um, my son used to get off the bus and come to the tattoo shop. He was tattooing when he was 15. You know, he just lived the life with me. When I went to convention, he'd set up a little camp underneath the table, and he'd be friends with all the people, and he'd have the snacks under there, and he just lived the life.
Did
My
you ever
son was raised in a tattoo shop from the age of 3 or 4 till till current. He's my manager now, and his wife is my other manager. He does not tattoo. He said he could never hold a candle to me, and if he didn't have that artistic talent, he's a musician, so he has the music side of us, and I have the visual side of us. He's got the audio side. So, but he is my manager, and I trust him. So it's his legacy, and he grew up in a shop, so he knows all the runnings and dealings and doings. I don't like that part, so he can have it.
It's like a second job.
It is a full-time job running me and my shop. I have like 10 employees, so it's like it's not that small of a deal. It's a thing. So I
It's
don't want
hard
to deal
getting
with
good
that thing
employees.
anymore.
Where's your shop?
It's in St. Augustine, Fountain of
Okay.
Youth Tattoo, Miss Never's Fountain of Youth Tattoo. Um, I moved there from 80. So I opened in Jacksonville in 82, no, 84. We moved from Brunswick to Jacksonville, opened the first shop there in Smith and Rogers. Then 10 years later, I knew I was going to be divorcing Eric. I opened Miss Debra's Fountain of Youth in St. Augustine, Florida.
I like that.
Thanks. Well, that was my birth name. I've changed it since then, so I didn't want to change my studio name because, like Peggy said, in a name, they get so confused. You got to retrain them again who you are. We decided to keep me, Miss Debra, in the business and just kind of make me another entity as Sofia because that's my legal name.
Nice.
So with that, I've been there since '94 to current. So, yeah.
So you've gone through all the ups and downs.
We all have.
Can you tell us about why you started the all female tattoo expo and let everybody know that you were actually the first original one to do that?
Okay, I started the Mark for Life tattoo convention, and we called it the International Mark for Life because I started right off the bat in inviting a couple international people that I knew, and there was 29 women that I knew that started it, 21 booths, and I started it. I was doing tattoo conventions, a couple I started in 1986, conventions, Grandpa Groovies, and he put me right at the front door, and that's when I met Jack Rudy and Brian Everett and Roy Boy and Dick Warisaki and Sailor Moses, because Moses come up to me because I got a tattoo, and he started yelling at me, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, well, I just came here. It's my first convention. I just thought I'd try it out." And he says, "No, I mean, what are you doing right here? This should be my spot. I should have the recognition to have this spot right at the front door." I said, "I don't know. They told me to set up here. I'm just setting up here." But after that, we became really good friends. So he's the one that taught me how to make magnum needles and how to do spit shading flash. And I'd gone down to Biloxi, Mississippi to visit him and stuff. But besides him helping me, I was kind of like on my own until I started conventions. And the guys were the ones that were my friends that helped me. Like when I met Debbie from Roy Boy, I said, "Oh, you're famous. I saw you in a magazine. You're just so great." And she went, and walked away. I was like, oh, heartbroken, but all the guys accepted me. So I had a little difference because Eddie loved me. Oh,
Eddie loved all the girls.
Louis loved me.
Louis loved all the
and then
girls.
I met Jack, and I used to run with him a little bit and watch him over his shoulder, and got to the point where I was bootlegging his flash at first, but we became really good friends. And at the end, he would say, "Well, if you want that off my flash, go get Dina to do it. She can copy it pretty good." Because he wanted to do just his own stuff, not what he put on the flash. Dick Warisaki and I and Brian Everett worked a lot together, so I had those other influences that helped me. We were all tattooing, but no gloves. We changed the needle, but we rewashed them and sterilized them at that time. We didn't use new ones every time.
We would
And
use
then
them
we
until
decided something's going to happen, so we better start regulating ourselves and started the APT, the Alliance of Professional Tattooists. And Moses was involved with that, and there was a bunch of crap in the beginning, but he nominated me, and he said, just watch things how they go, and you know, I think it'll be worth it. But then it all like crashed down, and we went to Atlanta and decided, well, we're gonna save this. So we did the art fusion, where I had people do art flash originals. I collected them, and then made a copy of them, the 25 copies to start with, and then auctioned off the sheets of flash and sold those sets at Tony Olivas' show. And that's how we made the money to keep APT going.
That's crazy.
So at my show, we had APT there every year promoting safe sterility tattooing, not only to the artists, but to the public as well, what they should look for. So, uh,
I have a question. Do you feel that we should unify the health department regulations nationwide?
I don't think they're no, because they don't even do that for any regulations. Each state is in charge of their own thing, and I think it would get too big. So here, where we had to have the doctor and the guild was involved, and they wanted to change things, they did change it in the wording to the direction of a doctor, so you didn't have to have the doctor on call or have personal contact with the client. um, when they changed the law, I worked with Mary Brandenburg and Senator Sobel to change it to where the bloodborne pathogen training, you didn't have to prove you're an artist. You just had to do that. You could get a tattoo license. We tried to get people to still do an apprenticeship and then teach them that stuff, then give them that. Nowadays, they're just, oh, if you go get your license and take that bloodborne pathogen, you can get a license as a tattoo artist. Mm-hmm. Take that license to a tattoo shop, get inspected if you get hired there, and you're working as a tattoo artist. That's how easy it is now in Florida.
Do you feel like it should change?
Not really.
I got something to say about just the change, because you asked Jackie if there's any changes you'd like to see. You know
In the laws,
in the in the
regulations,
industry and laws and regulations in general. It's getting hard. Like I said, there's corporations coming in. Like, for example, there's a Turkish corporation now that's coming in
opening
from
shops.
Turkey. I won't mention the name. I just don't want to do that. Anybody that knows anything knows who they are. And it's a huge conglomerate, and they've marketed this name, and they come into
In
major
the malls,
cities, not just the malls, in any city where there's anything going on, and they just completely take it over. They dominate. You know, they've got the artists they crank out. They don't even speak English. They you come in, you meet a desk person, you tell them what you want, they get the iPad out. You haven't even met your artist yet. They put you with somebody, and I think it's at that time when you meet your artist, they give you some crazy figure, but people are doing it as a novelty. So there's novelty things going on now, because tattoos just aren't good enough anymore to be a thing. You got to have a novelty. They're selling kava and kratom now, kratom bars. I got a place called Ink and Barley. They sell beer and tattoos. It's a beer bar, a tattoo bar with alcohol, right up the street from me. So they're gimmick selling now, people just selling stuff that doesn't have anything to do with tattoos, I don't know if it's trying to keep their heads above water. I don't know what they're doing. But anyway, I don't like it. I don't think it's right. Um, I'm old school, we fought hard for this industry to be what it is, and to see these guys skating in because they see, success and money and what we've created. I don't like it. I think it's wrong. I think it's exploitation of us all. And that's just my own personal point of view. I'm sure everybody's got a different take on it, but that's my personal point of view. We worked really hard to get this industry where it is, to keep it safe, to keep it for, people across the board. It's not for everybody, but if you're going to get it, make it good.
If we wanted to do that, we shouldn't have ever had any tattoo conventions. We should have kept it just like they did, old school. Nobody knows nothing. Nobody knows where to get the supplies.
Well, the internet killed it all. The internet,
but it opened up.
It couldn't have stopped forever. I mean, the internet blew it up.
China saw one needle and they said, "Oh, damn, we could do these," and they mass produce them.
How do you feel about how art schools now don't teach tattoo history as part of the curriculum?
Well, I think it's a shame. Everybody knows how I feel about that. I'm a historian through and through. I want to know my roots. they don't care anymore. The kids don't care. They just know it's a way to make money. The other friends they're struggling with their lives, and if they can tap into a tattoo artist somehow and get in that door, they're gonna do it. I don't know. I just feel like it's off the charts. Tattooing. It's just gotten out of hand. There's a shop on every corner. You know, there's a shop everywhere. The kids don't know.
It's
We walk into a convention now. Jackie Gresham, Dina, Peg, walk into a freaking tattoo shop now. Nobody knows who we are. We go to a convention. I'll tell you right now, I don't go anymore because I feel lonely. I feel lonely. I go in there.
Don't know
all
anybody.
The guys are dead that we knew. All the Philadelphia Eddies and the storytellers and the historians are all gone. They're all dead. Nobody knows us. They just think she's some old lady in a wheelchair scrolling through there. I don't know what the fuck they think about her. I don't know what they think about me. They think I'm somebody from another, time period. I usually
maybe the promoters should take responsibility of actually emphasizing and promoting you guys.
Well, a lot of the magazines did that though. They'd buy the magazines and they'd look and see you and say, "Oh,
they did that." But now the industry's too big to keep up with everybody. There's too many people to even know that we even exist. You can't even know all the names
of the people that are in one convention.
That's why Jackie and we're trying to make it a point now, because we know the importance of history and we know the importance of keeping these stories going. And that's why this woman, 80 years old, drives around from person to person, because that's how we did it back in the day. That's how we made a human connection with an artist. We went to their house. We spent the night with them. We had coffee and we talked about shit and we drew pictures. Yeah, that's how we learned. We didn't just I love that idea. I love this idea because I learned a lot about these women this weekend that I did not know, because back in the day we were too busy trying to keep it together and do what we were doing and be where we needed to freaking be. Yeah. And be responsible women in the industry and keep it all what we were supposed to keep our jobs, to keep our place, to keep, how women keep yourself together, that we didn't have time really to sit down and get to know each other, a lot of us. So for me, this is why I came to this thing, because I was hoping there would have been more ladies. But like Peggy said, the women that showed up for a reason. And to learn about these beautiful young women that do care. And you're looking at some of the selected faces in here that know a little bit of history, that do care. And that's why they're here, and that's why the next generation Liz is sitting over there, and that's why the next generations are sitting right beside her. And the next generation is this woman here, this little beautiful child here has already put enough hours in that would blow your mind in tattooing, and she's just so young. Those are the women that I think that are important to keep carrying the torch, and they're past the torch, hopefully, for us around. And they will have the stories to tell, because they sat in a hotel room getting tattooed by these legends
and listening to the
stories. And I hope to God that it encourages them to carry on the way we're trying to carry on. And when we all and we'll all have this bond now, because we all got this tattoo together here. And that's called Marked for Life, for sure. We are marked for life, right? And and that's what it's about. That is the
living
magic.
Life and having fun, enjoying every day.
That is the magic that I look for in this industry that is a dying art and that we've lost. But we know, we know that we're magicians. We know how to get it back, and we know what to do to bring the charm and the magic and the beauty and the glory back to this industry, because it's the behind the scenes stuff that's really so beautiful and magical. And it was back in the day. Remember when we would do the conventions and how awesome it was after the show? After everybody's sneaking to everybody's rooms and tattooing and just finding out about each other and doing the things we can't do in front of the GP.
And Bob Montagna, he would get everybody together and do a dinner out.
We didn't want the general public to know what we were doing. We didn't need them to know our secrets. We didn't need them to know why we were where we were at that given time. We wanted to keep some of the, I don't know, I didn't want to keep some of the magic in it. You know, I didn't want to keep my stories. Like Jackie would freaking disappear. Peggy freaking disappear. We didn't even know where these guys were half the time, you know. So they would do their thing, come in there, like knock your socks off and leave. I'm like, where'd they go? You know? And so there were lots of times
Or we
when
have the list of the room numbers.
yeah, we would write. Well, I swear you had a million numbers on my hand about like 2 days ago. We would write everybody's room numbers down and run to everybody's rooms and try to find each other. And you know, it's like a scavenger hunt for people
But
at the
now,
time.
instead of running around, now you got your phone. Hey, where are you?
Yeah, yeah. So you know, the times have changed, but those magical moments, I hope never die. I hope these magical moments never die, and I feel that. I hope you do. Thank you for all of this because I think this is the first one of these reunions of the 20-year reunion women that was very important to see what it was going to be feel like, what it's going to be about. What we did get accomplished in these few days has been phenomenal.
Will you
As
guys
far
be
as
repeating this again?
Yeah,
absolutely, we've
yeah.
decided to make
Everybody
it a thing.
that came said they want to come back.
We want to do it again.
And
yep.
I've already talked to them about renting all the rooms.
Bring new people in that we haven't gotten a chance to talk to yet, but we're hoping to promote this somehow with just what the few things that we had going on and stir up an interest in it and get some new blood in here and
There's several
whatever
people that were
whoever
gonna
shows
come
up
couldn't.
like she said
But-
shows up, right? Whoever shows up shows up.
Whoever shows up is supposed to be.
It's supposed to be here and it's meant to be. And because of the smallness of the group, there was more intimacy and there was more time, you know, to get to know people. Yeah, more personal. I mean, I can't even look at your book yet without crying. Honest to God, I can't even look at that thing yet. You know, book she wrote without crying because
Mark was impressed with all the people that showed up for the yoga because he said, people say they're going to come and they never come. I said, well, I think they're coming because they were living right there.
yeah, all of us came to the yoga class and stuck it
We
out,
had
even though none of us
17
knew
people
yoga
there.
really, you know, we were done. But we did. We support each other like that. But I've had a great week. I've had an absolutely memorable, great week. And I needed it. I needed a good refresher, you know, from the ladies. And I am fired up again about tattooing. I get so fired up when I get around this like do it on the moment, spur of the moment, fly thing, you know, like to me, that's what tattooing's. Look at my legs. I got them like new little home hand poke tattoos make me just as happy, if not more, than any huge thing I could sit and get from somebody I don't really know. You know what I mean? Or whatever. These little
That's
things
my
I
favorite.
get, they keep us, they make us so happy because I will always have Jackie to look at now. I will always have a little thing to remember Peggy by, you know, and that warms my heart so much to just have those little memories of somebody to carry with you to your grave.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, I wanted to thank you, ladies. I really appreciate it. I'm going to do some of the younger ones now.
Yay!
Okay.